Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, on this episode, I want to talk about a listener question that came through a couple days ago via LinkedIn. And I really like this question. This is a listener who's been listening to us for quite some time. Her name's Nicole, and she reached out because she heard an episode from us a while back where we talked about vulnerability being a leadership superpower. And she was wondering how to kind of walk the fine line between being vulnerable, but also showing composure. And she said that the reason why this is coming up right now is that she works for an organization where there are a lot of changes happening and a lot of uncertainty and a lot of unknowns. And that's creating some anxiety in a lot of the employees. And even from the leadership standpoint, there's information that not even the leaders have. A lot of unknowns there, and so it's difficult to answer the questions. But she wants to know how to be able to be vulnerable when it comes to that and transparent, without eroding the trust that the employees have in the leadership team. And I thought it's a great question because there is that fine line between, how do you, we talked about it on a recent episode about, leadership is the ability to hide your panic from others. And, you can be very transparent that you feel like things are out of control and that you have no confidence in what's going on and no information. And that's very vulnerable, but it's also not going to do wonders for the level of confidence your team has in you. And so there is that fine line, but I think it is absolutely possible to do both, to show vulnerability without losing that confidence that your people may have in you.
Yeah, I think it's what I immediately envision is kind of the whole, like, as a leader, if I just throw my hands up and I'll be like, I don't know what's going on either. I know we're not sure. Like if I give off this vibe, where, to your point, we said it earlier, like transparently, where like I'm being overly transparent with what I do know or with what I don't know, and then I'm kind of putting that in the bucket of vulnerability. I think that's where it gets somewhat dangerous, I think,
Right.
in the idea of how people will look to you as the leader. I think that you can absolutely, and I've been in that position before, where it's like, look, we don't have all the answers. There's a lot that's going on. There's changes that are happening, right? We all know that, and we all feel the emotion of these things as we work through them. And I can even share with you maybe a time in my career or my life where I've been through something like this before, and kind of here's what I focused on, here's what I did, here's what I believed, and here's the best thing that we can do right now for one another and for the work that we have in front of us, right?
Right.
Being conscious not to overpromise, not to be like, everything's going to be okay. Right? Because that's a very subjective opinion on what's okay to you versus what's okay to me. How do I feel about it? Did I get impacted? Did you get impacted? Did we all get impacted? Like, if there's a lot of change and things that's happening around us, it's okay to say that that's the facts of the current situation that we're all in right now. But it also has to come across, you have to come across as a leader as having that confidence and capability of continuing to lead your team, to be able to answer questions, to be able to provide perspective, or even just create spaces to talk about it. You know what I mean? Like, I think that sometimes having conversations around the fact that this is what's happening, even if we don't have answers, it feels good to know that other people may be feeling this way as well. And it may feel good to hear other people's thoughts or opinions or what they think could be done, should be done, what they're considering. That can be very helpful in those types of times and spaces.
Right. When the people who I know who seem to have this kind of confidence superpower in the face of uncertainty, it is typically rooted in a history of experiences of other similar things where things worked out okay. And so it's, we as people tend to create monsters out of unknowns when we don't have anything to relate it to. And the longer you're in the workforce and the more roles you have, and maybe the number of times that you've gone through reorganization of a company that you're with, maybe you've been laid off before, maybe whatever it was that led you to where you are right now, the breadth and depth of experience that you have in weathering these storms tends to give you the grit and the kind of inner confidence to just understand that that things will work out. And things working out doesn't mean that you know how they're going to work out. Things working out doesn't mean that you know what's going to happen. Things working out just means that, even though I don't know how things are going to go, I'm confident that however it goes, I have the skills necessary to weather this storm, meaning my resume is up to date, my network is strong. I've talked to people who at other organizations, and I have a safe place to land if necessary. It's the way it's no different than you used to live in Florida, and sometimes there's hurricanes in Florida, and you may not know whether the hurricane's going to be a category 3 or 4 or 5 when it hits land, but the level of confidence that a person has, you or your neighbors or the community, is less rooted in, we know it's going to drop down to a category 3 or 2, because you don't know. Whether or not you have confidence that you'll get through it is whether or not you have hurricane-proof windows or a go bag to get out of the area if you have to. That you have a plan in place for your loved ones and your pets and the things that are important, and the photo albums are already in the car. Those are the things that let you have more confidence, not a kind of a blind hope that something is going to work out a certain way. And so I think that the more you've been through these things, the more likely it is that you have confidence, because you've learned from mistakes, and you plan better, and you just don't. You're less likely to have your mind create these monsters out of things just because you don't know.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point in an analogy, because similarly, it's like if you, as a leader, if you ignore the storm.
Right.
If you want to pretend maybe not. I mean, these things have gone off course before. I'm not too if you don't create the space to have conversations about the storm and at least acknowledge the storm, that's where I think we said earlier, it erodes the confidence in the leader, right?
Yes.
In those moments, in these times, as a leader, if you want to be vulnerable and kind of, as the question is, composed to a degree, I think you have to be able to walk in there with confidence and say, let's talk about the reality of what's going on right now. And let's talk about the fact that, like many of you, I'm also feeling this, right? This is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm seeing. We don't all have the answers. We don't all know where this is going. We don't know what's the impact of the storm. Right. But there is a storm, and it's here, and we're working through it. So let's talk through some of that. Right. Let's allow a space where we can talk through the work. Let's share maybe some of the things that we're thinking. Let's know that we're going to do our best to work through this together. And then we're going to take this as it goes. And as the storm gets closer and closer and closer, right, then we'll be able to have more and more of these conversations to talk through and to work through the issues and the situations that are happening around us. And I think that, to me, is how you balance that ability of being composed and vulnerable and transparent enough to be able to share the things that you can share. And I think also sometimes in leadership, you may know more than you're allowed to share.
Sure, that happens
and so,
often. Yeah.
Yes, so you have to also be conscious of that. There's a responsibility there of having information that is not right for everyone, for a lot of different types of reasons. That doesn't take away your ability to be vulnerable. It doesn't take away your ability. And I was in a conversation not too long ago where I had to say, I do know the answer, but I'm not able to share it right now.
Right.
Right. Because I'm not going to lie and say I don't know.
Right.
But I also have a responsibility that I can't share.
Right.
But I do know the answer. I can't share it right now. But know that as I'm able to do that, we'll have conversations. I think it will make a lot more sense to you as we have that conveation, and as I'm able to share with you the information that I have.
Yeah, I mean that's important because saying you don't know the answer, first of all, it's not true, but B, they'd know it's not true. They'd know that you know the answer and that you're just not sharing it. And so, yeah, that transparency is really important. But on the other side of it too, even if you have the confidence that something's going to work out because you have information, I think it helps to speak to the person with the empathy of kind of putting yourself in their shoes with the information that they have. And I think you're a lot more likely to come off the right way. So you start with the transparency of, yeah, let's get the housekeeping out of the way here. Yes, I may know the answer to this and I can't share it right now, but I understand what you're going through, and I understand from the perspective that you're processing this with the information that you have. And it's not just, oh, trust me blindly, this will be okay. It's what can we do to make sure that this impacts you the least amount, no matter what the outcome is. And so I think this is where leadership as a responsibility of leaders, you can work with employees on building up their network, building up their resume, the things that you can do that say, hey, you're not just an employee to me on my team and for what you can do for me. My job as a leader is to help you whatever the next stage of your career is, even if it's not under me or even in this organization as a whole. And so helping employees do the things they need to do to be able to land safely wherever it is, if there's going to be a problem that impacts their role or their career. I think it's really important, and it will go a long way in terms of building the relationship. And hey, if it ended up not being needed, you'll still get the points as a leader for showing that that's what you cared about, was not just what they could do for you in the moment. It's like when an organization is going to go out of business and they don't tell the employees that they're going out of business until an hour before closing time because they're worried about the employees stealing from them or not showing up to work or whatnot. It's like, no, it always works out better if you are transparent with them and you tell them what's going on. And then you say, hey, for the people who stick around and help us get through the closing, this is what we're going to give you for helping us do this, because we understand how difficult this is. That's the right way to do it, not hiding it from them and then hoping, that things are going to work out. They're just going to keep their head down and focus until you walk in at the last minute and lock the doors.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1 minute hack. But first, a few words from our sponsors.
All right, for this episode's 1 minute hack, what I want you to do is understand that leadership in moments like these constitutes kind of a two-tier approach. On the one side, there has to be a space for people to kind of talk about these things that they're worried about from an emotional standpoint. There has to be a safe space where they can come to you and talk to you and be able to kind of air their emotions around the situation, which could be rooted in fear and anxiety, lack of knowledge of what's going on, and that while you have to be as transparent as you can, even if it comes to saying, I can't tell you this thing, but I'll help you get through whatever it is together. Go through that process with them, have the empathy, let them kind of figure that out, but then also understand that the second tier is making sure they know that decisions made from that standpoint will likely be less helpful to them in the long term. So whether that's, putting their head in the sand and just hoping things work out, or, leaving their organization preemptively without knowing whether or not their position is going to be impacted, neither of those are necessarily smart decisions. But the right thing to do is to say, let's figure out what we can do to make sure that this impacts you the least negatively, regardless of what happens. And that could be helping somebody figure out who their strong network connections are, making sure that their resume is up to date, making sure that their LinkedIn profile is up to date, offering, being well versed in whatever programs or benefits or perks the organization has to help with, job placement if needed, or, COBRA health insurance if that's possible, or whatever things there are that make this less of an impact on their life. Knowing about those things and how to communicate them in a way that lets the employee feel like, hey, whatever happens, I have a plan. There might be 4 different plans because I don't know how this is going to go, but whatever happens, I'm not reacting in the moment and hoping it goes well. I know what the next step is and I know how to move forward. That's how you maintain the confidence your people have in you as a leader, while also showing that vulnerability to meet them where they are, from the emotional and the anxiety standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's a great hack. And the reality is, to your point, many times, if we knew what the answers were, if we knew what's going to happen, if we knew these things, it wouldn't be in this space that we're currently in when it comes to dealing with ongoing change or not having, just dealing with all the things that are going on, right now in general, and then in general with like the work that you're doing. Like anytime there's a lot of change that's happening, we're in this space, and you have to accept, number one, that you're in that space, and you have to create spaces to talk about the space that you're in, and then even talk through and work through potential outcomes, good and bad. So like I like the fact that you kind of talked about like, well, yeah, like what if? Like let's talk about if all of this works out and nothing changes and we're kind of like back to where we were. All right, what does that look like? What did we learn? What would we do for the future in case this was to happen again? Okay, now let's talk about if this goes the other way. This is not what it's always been. There are major changes here. Things are going to happen, and there's the potential that people would have to do other work. Like what are you doing to prepare yourself for that opportunity as well? Like it's important that we're ready for any types of changes that are happening constantly, to make sure that you're prepared for whatever might be down the road. And I think that just starting with that conversation, I think, can be helpful, at minimum, to just work through the emotions of the change curve.
Right, for sure. And it's also important that as a leader, your experience is going to be different than what your people's experience is. Now, I don't mean the experience in the moment for this situation. I mean the past experience. And so how an employee is able to figure out what the way forward is, or having the confidence to know that it will work out, is going to be very different if you're talking to a 27-year-old person who's in an entry-level position and has been with the company 2 years, versus somebody who is 55 and in a leadership role and has been with the company for 25 years. Because the reality of what they've experienced in their life will either make them more or less prepared emotionally and practically for what's coming up. Also, the potential fallout will impact one versus the other, far differently too. So knowing that spans, different demographics and ages and experiences and what's on the resume, all those things matter for how an employee is going to interpret the potential outcomes. And if you try to project what you know because of your experience onto them, that's not going to go well. You need to meet them where they are and understand that what they're going through is a product of their history and their resume and the potential outcome or the fallout or what they're going to go through. And so if you meet them there as opposed to expecting them to be where you are, then you're far less likely to come off like you know something they don't know and you're keeping it from them, or like whatever changes are happening are going to impact them but not you. But you also won't erode the relationship at the same time. So I think it's very possible to do both, but you have to be intentional about both.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.